welcome to her Wild Side Hockey Podcast. I am your hostess, Mickey, aka Hockey She Wrote, and I am coming to you from my dining room today because I was not planning to do a podcast until the big contract extension news dropped this afternoon. And for once, I actually happened to not be busy. I was outside watching my kids play. So that's kind of the reason I'm in my dining room, so I can still be available if some emergency happens. Anyway, it is July 29th. So we are almost done with one more month of the off season. And I was just looking, we have just over 1 month until the first preseason game. The first preseason game is, it's not over 1 month. I'm already fast forwarding through the summer. It is just under 2 months until the first preseason game, which is September 21st. So that is actually coming very fast. And I could not be happier about that. But let's jump into the Brock Faber contract extension that was just signed today. Okay, first of all, we're just going to talk about the specifics. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the reactions from people both within the Minnesota Wild kind of fan sphere and from people who are not Wild fans necessarily. So first of all, this extension is 8 years. That is the longest that a team can give one of their existing players. There are no bonuses. He has a straight up $8.85 million average annual value, which I did not write down, but it's something like a $68 million total package. It starts during the 2025-2026 season. So he still has one more season on his ELC with the Wild. So technically, from right we're standing right now, we have 9 years of Brock Faber. It has a no move clause. And then once he gets in the 5th year of the contract, he has a 15-team no trade list. And he is right now 21 years old. And there's a lot that is creating a lot of discourse around the league. But let's first remember that Faber played one whole season. He's only played a full season in the NHL. He also played when he signed with the Minnesota Wild. I don't know if you can hear that. That's my grandma's dog, Sophie, who we are watching. I don't know what she wants, but she wants something. But before the full season, he played in a handful of regular season games and then in 6 playoff games. And to the point where the first game he played, they kind of were like, yeah, let's just throw him out there. They had already kind of secured a playoff spot. They were like, let's just see what this kid can do. And he impressed them so much that they were like, okay, let's put him in again. Okay, let's put him in the playoffs. And that's kind of what I don't think people understand is that Brock Faber has continued to be challenged by the Minnesota Wild organization in general, the coaching staff. And every time that they've issued him a challenge, he has stepped up to the plate and just knocked it out of the park. He, like I said, he stepped right in. He did not look out of place on an NHL team. He did not look out of place in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, that series they played last season, obviously. And since then, he has just upped his minutes, played first pairing last season when the whole team was just decimated with injuries, and, took on this role where he could do anything that they needed him to do. They asked him to quarterback a power play. He did it. Top unit. Okay. He had never done that in college. And here he was in the NHL quarterbacking the top power play unit of the team. He's just done it all. And honestly, the only point where he kind of started to crack a little bit this past season, was after there were so many injuries that not only was he playing 25 to 30 minutes a night in a league that has 82 games a year, where he's coming from college where they have less than half of that a year. So he's already dealing with that. Not to mention that he is partnered up with Jake Middleton, who is not necessarily a top pairing guy. I mean, he is and he isn't. And they're playing behind a team that's made up of like maybe 3 good players, a whole bunch of guys that play like a fourth liner, which is not a bad thing. It's just a different thing. And like half of an AHL team. And he was holding it all together. Now, this podcast is probably going to be a little bit shorter. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause. I'm going to put on my quick little 1-minute ESPN Plus commercial. And then when we come back, I am going to talk more about the reaction and such around the league. So if you will just hold tight for 1 minute and watch/listen to this ad, I will be right back.
Thank you for watching the show. If you enjoy our podcast and want to support the show, consider signing up for ESPN Plus via our link at insidetherink.com/ESPN or scan the QR code on your screen now. I have ESPN Plus, and I personally love all the college sports, UFC, MLB, and NHL games all across ESPN platforms. Over 1,000 out-of-market NHL games are on ESPN Plus every year. Make sure you hit the QR code or go to insidetherink.com/ESPN to make sure you don't miss out on any of this year's NHL action. And if that wasn't enough for you, ESPN Plus is currently offering a bundle of ESPN Plus, Disney Plus, and Hulu for $14.99 a month. You get sports, the kids get Disney, and Hulu is the added bonus. It's the perfect bundle. I personally have it, and I don't know what you would do without it.
Welcome back. So first of all, there are 2 very different reactions to this contract extension. On the one hand, we have Minnesota Wild fans. Maybe not, maybe you're not even a fan, but Minnesota Wild, there's not really a word other than fans, but anyone who watches the Wild consistently. You don't have to like the Wild, you don't have to root for the Wild, but if you watch them consistently, pretty much everybody that falls into that category that I have seen has talked about what a good contract this is. How this is absolutely a steal. This is exactly what everyone thought it would be. And we all know what we're getting, and we love it. On the other hand, there are plenty of people around the league who are making it known that they think signing a 21-year-old to this contract is absolutely ludicrous. And they also don't seem to know a damn thing about Brock Faber, which explains why they think it's such a bad contract. Or not bad, they just... I get it. Here's the thing. I get it. He is 21 years old. That is very young. Yes. But first of all, you need to remember that Brock Faber is a Minnesota boy. Born and raised in Minnesota. He played for the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers for 4 years, and then he stepped into the Wild. That means that everyone in the Minnesota hockey world has known about Brock Faber for longer than just when he's been on the Wild. Most hockey fans here, I would say, pay attention to hockey in general. Now, that doesn't mean that they watch high school hockey. That doesn't mean that they watch college hockey. But they're going to be reading about that news, and they're going to know the names. And Brock Faber is a name that has been around for a while. So Minnesota fans know what we're getting. Brock has consistently been good. He's consistently been high-level defenseman. So it's not a surprise. I mean, it's a surprise seeing how quickly he adjusted to the NHL. It's not a surprise that he's there and has stayed there, if that makes sense. And yeah, I get it. This is a big contract for a young guy. But I really think that people who haven't paid attention to the Wild in the past season really don't understand just how terrible the season was. And I'm not necessarily talking about just points-wise or how many games they lost or just the injuries that were sustained. The players who were injured, how long they were out was awful. I mean, it decimated the team. It really did. It took out the top scorers and the top defensemen. Like the veteran presence of the team was out, just gone. And like Jared Spurgeon, captain of the team, top defenseman, was out basically the entire season. So you have this young kid who has stepped in, and they keep kind of like, even though they don't want to have to put it all on the rookies, right? Like, you don't want to do that because that is going to, it could backfire on you, like it could easily backfire. Now, more power to Brock Faber and then the other rookie on the team last season, Marco Rossi, because they took on the pressure, and the two of them were really the ones that drove the team forward and held it together so that they weren't great at all, but they also were not terrible for most of the season. So I think people are really looking at some of these stats and kind of going like, well, who cares? But here's the thing. Again, Brock Faber held together the team in his first NHL season. He had 150 blocks. He came away with, I think it was 47 points. It was 8 goals and then 30-some assists. And he was actually, here, I wrote down a few stats, which is he actually was the NHL rookie with the highest time on ice average this past season. He averaged just under 25 minutes a game, I believe. And he actually, out of all NHL players, he was 6th overall in time on ice as a 21-year-old defenseman. He was putting up points, even though he was never really known as like a super offensively skilled defenseman. But he still managed to do that. He stepped in and quarterbacked the power play when basically any other defenseman that could do that was out. He played all 82 games. And he also, the Calder Trophy, if it had been any other year, he would have been an absolute shoo-in. The only reason he did not win the Calder Trophy is because he was up against a generational talent. That's it. I think we also need to compare. He's broken franchise records alongside, just looking incredible in the league as a whole. He put up the highest point total for a Minnesota Wild rookie in franchise history. And he came in second for highest point total of a rookie in the Minnesota Wild, second only to Kirill Kaprizov. So I think people are getting really stuck on the wrong number in all of this. He deserves this. And actually, honestly, I think most of us that are, in the paying attention category expected him to have signed, $9 million plus per year. So I actually think that he took a slight discount. And you know why he did that? He loves Minnesota. He loves the state. And if you know someone from Minnesota, you probably know that most of us are like that. Like, you were born and raised here. You love this state. When you watch TV and they mention Minnesota, everyone's like, hey. He is the same way. I mean, he really just seems like this incredibly sweet Minnesota boy who cannot wait to continue playing on his hometown team. The other thing is that not only did he give them a slight discount, everyone's got a pretty good feeling that he will be the next captain of the Minnesota Wild. Jared Spurgeon has, I believe, 2 more years left on his contract. I might be off on that, but just a handful more seasons. And it would not be a surprise to see Brock Faber wear that C after that. Not only was he captain of the Gophers, he also just, even as a rookie, came in and showed such great leadership and such great accountability. If you watched any of his post-game interviews, he would be the first person to point out when he did something wrong. He would own up to anything that he even felt he slightly did wrong. Even stuff where everyone else is like, that was not you. That was not your problem. And he's like, well, no, it is. Like, we're a team. This was my problem too. So if you are someone who is not sure about that number and such a young age, I invite you to watch a Minnesota Wild game. Like, watch the game and watch him specifically. Because he's a little bit like Jonas Brodin, where he doesn't make a mistake. If there's a mistake that's been made by, either Faber or Brodin, it is because something's wrong. It's either they are injured and they're trying to play through an injury, which at the end of the season, we did find out that Brock Faber had been playing through an injury. I believe he was invited to go to the men's World Cup championships over in Czechia. I don't remember. That feels like so long ago. But he actually turned it down because he wanted to rehab his injury and make sure that he keeps his training up through this summer so that he can come back and even get better, because I honestly feel like he hasn't found his ceiling yet. And if last season was his floor, that is spectacular. If the Minnesota Wild can stay healthy next season, I think we have a chance to see him take even bigger strides than he did last season. So overall, he has earned every single penny of that 8-year, $8.85 million contract. He really has. He has earned it both on the ice through the way he's played and off the ice through the way that he has been a leader and how much he connects with the fan community, the hockey community as a whole. He does so much outreach and he does so much to help different charities and support them that he just deserves every single penny. So I would love to hear if you have any questions or comments that I could talk about on the next podcast about his contract, because honestly, I know that I'm biased, but I think it is absolutely perfect for him. So let me know. And until then, have a great week and I will see you soon.